These two new lenses are the answer to something that we have desperately needed for our APS-C cameras since the invention of APS-C mirrorless cameras. For years, if you were an APS-C photographer, you had this one problem. If you wanted a great portrait lens, well, there were plenty of options, but if you wanted that super compressed professional look that portrait photographers out there love, there was basically only one choice. You had to spend a lot of money on a giant full-frame lens. Today, that finally changes. This is the new 75mm f1.8 EVO for APS-C, and this is the new 90mm f2.2 EVO for APS-C. That's right, the EVO line that Mark Bennett and I have been obsessing over has finally come to APS-C, and these are the first two lenses in the line designed specifically for smaller sensors in APS-C cameras. At launch, they are coming to Sony E, Nikon Z, and Fuji X-mount, which is exciting. This video is sponsored by Viltrox, who sent over both of these new lenses for testing. They will not get to see this video before it goes live, and you guys know that sponsored or not, I tell it like it is. I won't be hiding any of the shortcomings that I find from these lenses. My goal in this video really is to show you what these lenses look like, what they are capable of in terms of performance, and let you make the decision if adding them to your kit is worth it or not. So let's begin. I'm going to start by talking about the 75mm. This isn't the first 75mm prime available for Sony APS-C. It was just a few years ago that Viltrox launched this Pro 75mm f1.2 lens, which to this day is the best portrait lens I've used for these little cameras. But it has three problems. Number one, size. It's big. Number two, weight. Heavy. And number three, price is high. This EVO version, while not f1.2, solves all three of these problems. What's interesting is that a year ago, I would have told most APS-C portrait photographers to buy the 75mm f1.2 Pro. Today, I'm not so sure that's true anymore. You do lose the f1.2 aperture and the absolute best optics, but what you gain is a smaller, lighter, cheaper portrait lens that performs, well, you'll see here in about a minute. It's made from the same materials as the other EVO lenses we have seen recently. The construction is solid feeling. It's a big step up over the Air line, not quite up to the level of the all-metal Pro or Lab line. It sits in the middle, and that's a good thing. It makes for a light yet premium feeling lens, one that you can easily take with you all day long and not have it strain your neck or wrist. There is a gasket around the mount for weather sealing, a USB-C port for firmware updates, the same physical controls that you get with every EVO line lens, a dedicated aperture ring that can be clicky or declicked with this switch, an autofocus manual focus switch, a focus hold button, and a manual focus ring that is nice and smooth. Inside there is a very quiet, near silent STM or stepper autofocus motor, and a bunch of fancy lens elements, 11 elements in 9 groups for the 75mm and 10 elements in 8 groups on the 90mm. For my sample photos, I'm using the Sony a6100 because my a6700 is broken. That's a story for another video. Let's talk about optics while I run you through some portraits from this lens and this budget-friendly camera. For portrait work, this 75mm EVO is a phenomenal lens. The full frame equivalent is 112.5mm, which means you get a bunch of compression where the background gets pulled into the frame and a huge level of subject separation. The results are images that look like they came out of a pricey full frame portrait setup. The backgrounds are beautifully smooth, bokeh is not distracting, no outlines, it's pretty clean, some cat eye into the edges and the corners, but it's solid overall. Sharpness in the center of the frame for portrait work is superb, the colors are deep and contrast levels are high. The autofocus motor was quick, quiet, and accurate. For a 75mm, that is an impressive statement. After shooting both of these for a few weeks, one of them surprised me because the lens I was expecting to like a little bit more wasn't the one that I ended up reaching for most often. You still get a ton of compression, excellent detail, great low light performance with that 75mm f1.8, and importantly, you don't have to stand 30 yards away from your subject to take a photo, but there is something about that 90mm. So let's take a look at some of those samples and discuss performance. The 90mm is something else. Part of it is I've never used a prime that is this small and gets you so close to the subject on an APS-C camera. This is a 135mm equivalent, which is a telephoto prime. The first time I started reviewing photos from this lens, I immediately understood why people love 135mm. Every background suddenly looked more expensive. Every location looked better than it actually was in the real world. The backgrounds just get bigger. Everything is nice and blurry. No distractions. The face also gets flatter, which is flattering, pun intended. This is one of those focal lengths that can make any average location look impressive. And just like the 75mm, there is so much sharpness here for portraits, excellent colors, beautifully smooth bokeh, and autofocus that you cannot complain about. But this lens is a little bit more challenging. If you want to use it indoors, I would say just forget about it. Unless you are in a big room, it would be pretty tough. If you are photographing more than one person, the focal plane gets very thin, which is another challenge. And the sheer distance that you need between yourself and your subject is worth mentioning. It's not like you need half a football field, but you do need about 20 feet of separation at minimum most of the time. So I wanted to know how much that 15mm difference matters. I put the camera in the exact same spot and I photographed the exact same Janessa. No moving closer, no changing the composition, just swapping lenses. Let me know which one you guys like more between these two. The 90mm has a bit more compression, larger bokeh, and less distracting backgrounds. And I was worried about the f2.2 versus f1.8, but in practice that difference is very small. You are not sacrificing much. And if you're wondering which lens surprised me, well, it was the 90mm. I expected to prefer the 75mm because it's the more practical lens, but there is something about the look coming out of that 90 that just kept pulling me back in. It's the one that I shot more with because it's the focal length that I didn't have access to in dedicated to APS-C form prior to this release. Before I discuss which one is a better buy, let's discuss the flaws. Both of these lenses have similar flaws. The first thing that you'll notice is vignetting. Wide open on both lenses, the corners are quite dark. They get better at f2.8 significantly, and by f4 the vignetting is mostly gone. When I was looking at these photos, I was impressed with the sharpness in the corners as well. I even compared the 75mm to my 75mm 1.2 Pro, and the corners are just as sharp in my eyes at f1.8, which is a phenomenal performance compared to a lens that is significantly more expensive. You'll notice there is a little bit of pincushion distortion, but it is slight, and a lot of photographers do prefer a little pincushion for portraiture. Chromatic aberration is well controlled. It's a good performance on par with the more expensive Pro lens line, but there is some loca or longitudinal chromatic aberration that you will see on out of focus high contrast areas. In terms of flare, you get about average performance. There are some strong flare elements and a loss of contrast shooting into the sun, and you can see that in some of my samples as well. I would recommend keeping the lens hood on for these lenses. Lastly, focus breathing is pretty heavy. For video work, you will see this sort of almost zooming in and out effect when you're moving focus points, which I will say at these telephoto focal lengths, even with larger lens bodies, that's an issue, so this is not a surprise with these more compact lenses. Optically, these are strong lenses. The flaws are there, but I complained about similar flaws and worse vignetting with the 75mm Pro lens, and these are less than half the price. I would argue performance is stronger than what a mid-tier lens typically provides, so I do think that they will be quite popular. The inevitable question that people will be asking is, which one should I get? And the answer is pretty simple. If you want to use a lens for family photos, for events, for general portraits, the 75mm is the easier recommendation. If you're going to be shooting headshots, dedicated solo portraits, you want maximum compression, and you love the 135mm look, then the 90mm is the one for you. I would summarize by saying that the 90mm creates more dramatic images, the 75mm creates more usable images. What's even more interesting about this pair of lenses is what it represents. APS-C camera systems have matured quite a bit over the last few years, and now we have serious general zooms, we have serious wide angles, we have serious street lenses, and now some serious portrait lens options. 5 years ago, if you were putting together a portrait kit, you would have had to make some compromises, but that's beginning to be less and less true every single year. Between the two of these, the 75mm is probably the lens that more people should buy, but the 90mm might be the lens that more people fall in love with. And that's why I think these lenses matter, not because they're perfect, not because they're the sharpest lenses ever made, but because for the first time, APS-C photographers have real choices when it comes to doing some serious portrait work. But let me know what you guys would choose down in the comments section. I will leave links to both of these lenses down in the description and in the comments as well. In fact, I don't even know what pricing is. I don't have that information in front of me. I will find out how much they cost at the exact same time. So use those links down below. Also, any coupons that I find to save 5 or 10%, I'll include those down below as well. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.